But now let's go ahead, everybody, and let's begin tonight's discussion. Like I said, we have a lot of comments that we're going to get into in this one, and we will be doing that jersey giveaway, as I mentioned. Once we hit right around 1K peak concurrent viewers or so, because it won't be long from now, we're quickly rising to almost 800. So thank you guys for continuing to smash that like and subscribe button on your way in. Until then, I want to go ahead and now start to get into more here in Metsland. So let's go ahead and do exactly that, everybody. And like I said, we have an array of topics that we're going to be breaking down in this one. But tonight's first discussion that I want to have is not the David Stearns remarks. We're going to go back to Stearns. A lot of things were said by Stearns as well as Mendoza today, but we're not going to begin tonight's discussion there. What we're going to begin tonight's discussion with is new news on the front of Michael Cain. If you guys do not know, the Mets have been reportedly connected to Michael Cain for, I'd say, the past calendar week to 10 days tops. So we know reportedly in the media, in the public, etc. We've also heard from Mark Feinstein of MLB.com over the past 72 hours or so that the Mets are, looking like one of the most interested clubs in starters Tatsuya Imai and Michael Cain. Tatsuya Imai makes an abundance of reasons of sense, and I really do hope the Mets land someone like Imai in the end coming over from the Palm Pro Baseball League. But Michael Cain, I also said, that does make levels of sense as long as you pair a Michael Cain acquisition with another signing of significance for the rotation or trading for someone of significance for the rotation. Because Michael Cain is a lot of things, and he's coming off of a year where his expected numbers weren't great, but I'm here to play devil's advocate because he dealt with injury this past year. That's why he only had 73 innings, mind you. The year prior and his first and full year as a starter, and that, mind you, the other piece going the other way, while Juan Soto and Trent Grisham landing the Bronx in a one-and-done year, at least for Soto. A nice little pit stop there with the crosstown rivals. But Michael Cain went on to dominate, and his first full year as a starter after being transitioned from a reliever to a starter a year prior for the New York Yankees. We saw Michael Cain put up a 30-start season and look like easily, without a doubt, one of the best starters in all of the National League in 2024. Then 2025 comes around. Michael Cain, unfortunately, goes down with injury for a good stretch of time, and he fluctuated in how he performed in his return. So there is actually some similarities from Cody Senga to Michael Cain, and not necessarily looking the same when they initially returned from injury, but Michael was also able to settle down and, again, have a respectable line to wrap up the season. Still just under 10K per nine, so a 3.2 walks per nine. And what am I most enticed about regarding Michael Cain in particular? Buster, you guys are saying Buster, but I have a feeling it's nonsense. You tag me in stuff on X, everybody, if there's actually anything notable. Otherwise, it really is, there's no point in it, okay? Because I know we're going to be getting a lot of nonsense that isn't accurate here in the chat. We do actually have something that's accurate, though, and I appreciate that. Okay. The perception in some corners of the industry is that Kyle Schwarber might be the first of the superstar position players to make his choice. Orioles among those competing with the Phillies. So Buster is just going on top of what so many people have reported already today. We're going to talk plenty on that front, so trust me, we'll get into more on Schwarber in this live stream, I assure you. But we have heard the common consensus through various reports today that he looks like he is that big domino that needs to fall for the Bats next, and that he's expected and anticipated to, in fact, be that one. So, yeah, Buster was just relaying more of the same that we've heard from others of greater credibility in this space right now. So let's continue on, and let's talk about a bit more here in Michael Cain, because, again, Michael Cain, 2024 season, fan-flippin-tastic. Everything that you would want from a starter with Ace caliber upside, who doesn't have many innings on his arm, mind you, because, again, he hasn't been a starter for long in his career. He's only done this for a couple of years now. And when he first transitioned as a starter in 2023 with the Yankees, who was the bench boss for the Yankees at the time? Yes, it was Carlos Mendoza. So there's already a rapport and a relationship there. And the Mets do like Michael Cain on a short to mid-level deal, and the Mets did, in fact, go the lengths to pitch him with a video-type meeting that we saw. And the point of the video, everybody, is that, this is now a point of the Mets taking him of greater seriousness. This is beyond just, say, initial preliminary discussion. Ever getting to the point of, video meeting, throwing video pitches in here as to what the Mets can essentially sell to Michael Cain, then that tells you that clearly there is a solid level of interest. So let's get into the pros and the cons as we evaluate someone like Michael Cain and what he would bring to the New York Mets. And let's begin here with the pros, because there are plenty pros here. And like anyone else, no one's going to be perfect. No one's going to be the best signing imaginable, but there are guys that have upside and there are guys who have some risk. And Cain is one of these unique situations where, on one hand, he does have a level of risk, but on the other hand, his upside is so pronounced that you'd be silly not to find yourself at least somewhat interested in his market. And as we can currently see, everybody, let me just get this to load, everybody, because Michael Cain's stats taking forever. There we go, finally. All right, so Michael Cain, 104 innings for the New York Yankees in 2023. We see a roughly 11 K per nine to a 2.75 walks per nine. We see a 2.75 ERA and a 3.48 expected ERA, a 2.2 WAR season for the reliever turned starter. 49 games, 9 starts for the Yanks in 2023. Then we get to 2024. 31 starts as part of that Juan Soto trade. 31 games and 30 starts. So a quick clarification there. 173 innings, over a 10 K per nine, a 3.2 walks per nine, a sub .9 home run per nine, a 2.95 ERA, 3.5 expected ERA, and a 3.3 FIP, good for a 3.9 WAR season per Fangraphs. Then we get to 2025, as I mentioned there, present day, 73 innings. Again, K to walk ratio slightly lower than what it previously was, and the expected numbers aren't great because, again, he was coming back from injury for a point WAR stretch. So Michael Cain is one of these guys that doesn't have the track record of consistency as a starter, and this, I'm sure, is one of the key things that will deter certain teams away. Now, I'm not overly concerned about these peripherals from this past season because, again, there's a massive asterisk given the injury that he had sustained initially in the first half of last season. But he does, however, have himself a fantastic looking 2024, which is what you should be getting in Michael Cain as long as you're getting the healthy Michael Cain, and he is healthy now. So that is not as much a concern for people, at least from what I've heard. 85th percentile in pitcher run value, 68th in fastball run value, 96th in off-speed run value there in 2024, 68th in expected ERA, 69th in expected batting average, 99th in average exit velocity. No one had a good average exit velocity against him at all, even when he's kind of more of a soft tosser as a right-hander. He sits 93 to 95 there. You have the chase percentage, 70 percentile, 78th in whiff percentage, 81st in K percentage, just below league average in walk percentage, 79th in barrel percentage, and 97th in the hard hit percentage. Again, only inducing soft contact. Ground ball percent right around league average here, 46th to be exact, and low on extension because even though he's 6'3", 210, he does not have a long extension at all. He kind of releases fairly early when you look at his release point. His sinker at 28% of the arsenal, sits 93, touching 95 plus. Changeup 25% of the arsenal. This was from the 2024 season, but I'm heavily factoring that sample size because that was a full starter sample size. We'll get to Tacoma in a second. 87 miles per hour is where he averaged there at 25% of the arsenal. 24% of the arsenal on the four-seam fastball, sitting 94 to 96 or so. The sweeper at 18% of the arsenal, right around 82 miles per hour or so, and the slider at 6% of the arsenal at right around 86 plus miles per hour. Okay, Pete Alonso is meeting other teams in Orlando, but do the Mets have a trump card? Mets interested in Alonso Union, but Tacoma is just going to be talking more about what we have been reiterating, but I will expand more on Tacoma's article here in just a second, everybody. Nothing that you guys should be concerned about or is groundbreaking news by any stretch of the imagination. It's all stuff that we talked about in our video from earlier and what we're going to further expand on in this one. So, point is, I think Michael Cain makes plenty of sense for the New York Mets, but he does not make sense to be the starter acquisition this offseason. That's where there's a problem, in my opinion. Michael Cain makes plenty of sense if you sign him on a 3-year contract from 60 to 70 plus million in that Shaman I range on an eerily similar structured deal. And you get him, who, of course, can try to prove himself to get to north of 180 innings next season like he did a year ago. And you look at him and you say, this guy has ace caliber upside. And you look at him and say, he doesn't need to be our guy because we don't just have McClain, but we also traded for Freddie Peralta, or we also traded for Joe Ryan or Pablo Lopez, or we unloaded the dump truck and got Tarik Skubal, or we went ahead and got Edward Cabrera. We pried him in the division, or you know what? We went ahead and we got ourselves Framber Valdez, or you know what? We went ahead and we signed ourselves Tatsuya Imai. You know, as long as you land another quality starter, hopefully one that has more ace upside and caliber than not that can provide innings, then you're putting yourself in a very good position. If you don't do that, then in my opinion, that this is a very risky move for the Mets if it was staying alone as their lone rotation pickup, because Michael Cain does not at all have the track record. He doesn't. He's very good when he's been out there, but he doesn't have the track record of innings. And the Mets need that certainty this offseason. They have to do everything in their power. It is imperative to make sure that they add guys that can give them a look as to what they're going to be getting in innings. And Michael Cain only has one season of over 100 innings in his career. And this is not a fault to his own. He has transitioned to a starter just 2.5 years ago, but the point stands. That lack of track record is something that should in fact hinder the Mets from looking at Michael Cain as the only exception of adding a starter this offseason. You can't do that. You simply can't. All right, guys. So as we continue on, we talk about Michael Cain. We'll go back to him. This is a simple yes or no in the live chat for each and every one of you. Simply spam in the chat, everybody. Do you guys think the Mets should sign Michael Cain on, let's say, hypothetically, around a 3-year contract? Give me a yes or give me a no and spam it in the live show. And to our replay viewers, let us know in the comments down below as well. To expand a little bit more regarding Michael Cain before we get on to our next topic, and we got a lot of things to answer regarding Alonso, a lot of things regarding the David Stearns remarks to the media today, and a lot of other things in between. We're getting a lot of yeses in the chat, so I appreciate that because I think you guys can agree with me. Michael Cain looks nice. He makes sense, just not necessarily the guy to be our only guy. If he's our only guy, I think the jury's still out as to if that was the right move for the Mets because they're adding too much uncertainty still. Wow, yeah, we're looking at easily like a 95+% yeses in the chat. We're looking at like 97% right now with the way you guys are spamming it. So nice to see. I'm glad most of us can agree on that front. But to expand just a little bit more on this report regarding Michael Cain from Joel Sherman of the New York Post, I just want to make sure you guys don't miss any details from this. And it is as follows. Let's also not forget a couple things because I didn't even highlight this because I've spoken about Cain at great length before, but just scrolling through Sherman's article was a nice, pleasant reminder. Michael Cain knows how to win in New York. That's another thing, right? Like this guy thrived with the New York Yankees and was dominant as a reliever and dominant when he was transitioned into a starter, had plenty of success. So this is someone who understands the big market. He's been here, already has that familiarity with someone like Carlos Mendoza, and I think would just be a seamless fit. Honestly, it'd be kind of insane. The Mets roll in the next year with Michael Cain and Clay Holmes as options for them in the rotation. Like just knowing that they're not even Yankees, but they're both on the Mets, and that role is nuts. And on top of it, knowing that you have the key actual like MLB ready piece from the Juan Soto trade between the Yankees and the Padres, and now Juan Soto and Michael Cain would be teammates, the more I'm saying it, the more I want it. Truth doing exactly that. And I got you. My apologies. Because you did have me. I was like, what? What are we talking about? All right, let's get to these David Stearns remarks, shall we? Let's go ahead. Shadow, thank you so much for the donation. Get a custom Bellinger jersey for John. Maybe it'll bring good luck. That's if he wants Bellinger. I got to ask him. John, do you want Bellinger as your player?
What's your reaction to the reports? What's your reaction to the reports of that, in particular, there was a disconnect between Juan Soto and Francisco Lindor?
Look, I think Juan and Francisco are two elite baseball players who care a ton about winning, who show up and work incredibly hard, and play very well together. And from my perspective, that's what's most important. And they go out and produce, and I think they're going to help us win a lot of games.
What's your reaction?
Laura Albanese with the interesting question there on these so-called Mets clubhouse turmoil. Next up, Carlos Mendoza speaking on the front, a Mets top outfield prospect that we are expected to see hit the major league level, and that is one Carson Bench.
Yeah, I watch a lot of films, talk to a lot of our people in player development. Exciting player, you know, a guy that impact the baseball, controls the strike zone, pretty good defender, the makeup. There's a lot to like about this kid. I keep hearing his name since we drafted him. And here he is, putting himself in a position where he's going to show up in spring training, ready to compete for a spot on our roster.
What are the reports you got on Carson Bench last year?
Yeah.
On Minter or Christian Scott and how their rehab is going?
Yeah, both progressing both progressing very well. You know, Scotty's going to come to spring training as a full participant, ready to go. AJ is looking more along sort of that original time frame where I don't know if he's going to be good to go on opening day, but it could be shortly thereafter.
Any updates on Minter or Christian Scott and how they're...
So nothing really new there. He just reiterated that AJ Minter might not be ready for opening day. And secondly, we saw that Christian Scott is ready to go and will be all set for spring training, which is great. And Gabriel, there's no fake news here unless you're referring to something there in the chat that someone else said. We're just relaying all that we know right now in Metsland. We have a lot to break down tonight. A lot to break down. And I can't turn the audio up. I told you guys, for everyone first chiming in, that the audio levels may fluctuate as I play these clips. That's out of my hands, unfortunately, because this is the audio levels of SNY's clips that do vary quite a bit, clip by clip. Now here's Carlos Mendoza speaking on the front of one Pete Alonso.
Feedback and any interaction with Pete in the offseason and just kind of, I mean, how do you feel? How much do you want Pete back and how big a piece is he?
I texted a couple of times with him, but obviously giving him his space, kind of like the same process that we went through last year. As far as how much do I want him, of course I want him. You know, you're talking about, you know, a guy that, as a manager, his ability to post, you know, every day, when you don't have to worry about who's playing first base and who's going to be hitting in the middle of your lineup, you know, you can beat that. So again, he earned it. He's going through the process right now, and I think David's been very vocal how much we want him, but you know, we'll see how it goes here.
David Stearns speaking on the topic of Cody Senga.
What updates have you gotten from Cody Senga, and is there reasonable expectations that he'll be able to contribute next year?
Yeah, Cody has had an outstanding offseason, and I think maybe that's the most encouraging development we've had in terms of our off-season player progression. He feels great. He feels as good physically as he has since that 2023 season. He's going through his normal off-season routine. He's actually going to come over to the States at the end of the month and throw here as well, which I think is a great sign. So we're very encouraged about how Cody is progressing through the offseason.
David, not having a smirk or a smile at all, tells me all you need to know. That was a clear pitch to teams. Hey, Cody's looking good. Come on and give us a nice offer. We'd be happy to give you him. That's exactly the tone and the look that I felt that I was picking up there from David Stearns. Could be completely wrong, but knowing how much the Mets are shopping Senga right now, I think it goes without saying they do not want to keep him. Carlos Mendoza talking on the topic of the Mets signing Devin Williams.
What was your reaction to getting Devin Williams?
Exciting, you know. Got the call from David, and I was excited. You know, you're talking about one of the best relievers for the past few years, a guy that's used to pitching on high leverage and, you know, closing experience. And, yeah, I mean, we're looking for help down there, and the fact that we got one here, I was excited.
What was your reaction?
David Stearns answering a question in regards to if the Mets would be more comfortable with a below-average defender at first base, knowing that they've now signed Marcus Semien. Not signed, but traded for Semien to be their now star defensively minded second baseman.
David, given Semien's range at second base, would you be comfortable with somebody who is maybe an average, below-average defender at first base?
I don't know that I necessarily look at Marcus's skill set at second at necessarily impacting the type of skill sets we're looking at the defenders around him.
David, given Semien's range at second base,
David Stearns was asked how he feels about the Mets starting rotation.
At this point, how do you view your starting rotation? Is there a need in your starting rotation?
Okay, I think we'd like to be able to add a starter. We are also also really comfortable and like our young starters that are emerging. We saw that last year with Nolan McLean. But certainly we're going to be canvassing where we can to bring in a starting pitcher and help stabilize the staff.
At this point.
And mind you, what has been the industry belief since the start of the offseason is that the Mets will land one starter and they are not able to trade other starter assets that are anticipated to impact them next year off the roster. So in a world where the Mets say can't trade or don't trade Cody Senga, then yes, they're less likely and inclined to add more than one starter. However, as long as they do trade someone like Senga, which they know they have been aggressively shopping, then it opens up more of the floodgates for them to get more creative with their rotation room and actually then build a rotation where then, let's say, again, speaking hypothetically, let's say you sign a Michael Caine and then you trade for a Freddie Peralta, just using that as an example right now. Then you would have the rotation of next season beginning as follows. Freddie's your 1, Nolan's your 2, Caine's your 3, your 4 is Holmes, your 5 is Manaea, or Peterson. The other is going to be, your 6th starter. And then you, of course, have Christian Scott, and I'd imagine at least one of Jonathan or Brandon Sproat, with the other likely have been traded in that deal for Freddie Peralta. That is the kind of depth you're looking for, because injuries are inevitable, guys. You're a fool if you don't think the Mets will likely have at least one starter go down with some form of injury in spring training. I never wish it. It just always happens. That's just the nature of the beast. And unfortunately, it's happened to our most important pitchers more often than not every single year. If it isn't our ace, then it's our number 2. It has not been well for many years now. So understanding that the ebbs and flows in the season cause inevitable injuries, you need quality depth. And that is why teams like the LA Dodgers most famously have done such an impressive job on making sure that even if they have guys like Blake Snell, Tyler Glasnow, and or Yoshinobu Yamamoto miss quality time in the first half of the season, they don't lose sleep over it because A, their offense helps supplement the lack of pitching, and B, their rotation is so effing deep that they make it happen without a problem. So I'm very confident if the Mets build a similar philosophy with tremendous rotational depth, with ace upside, with more than one ace caliber starter, that is what's going to properly put them in the position to get them where they need to be. And obviously, they just have to go out and do it. And David, you can stop side-eyeing me right now, my guy. My goodness, how long are you going to hold that? More remarks regarding David Stearns now on the topic of bringing back. And I say bring back because he worked with him a lot in Milwaukee, and Devin Williams.
Status of your bullpen at this point in the offseason?
So we're certainly thrilled that we were able to add Devin Williams. I wouldn't say we're done with our bullpen at this point. We recognize that we have slots to fill. Some of those may come through free agency. Some of those may come through trade. Some of those may come from some internal candidates who we think are poised to take a next step, either in their development or the next step in perhaps a role they can occupy at the major league level. But we understand we've got some roles to fill in the pen, and I'm confident we're going to be able to do so.
What do you feel of the status of your bullpen at this point in the offseason?
So
that you use when we talk about Pete, but to what extent is he a priority? Like, you don't have a clear and obvious starting first baseman right now. There are other guys you can go and get, but to what extent is Pete himself a priority for you?
I think Pete has demonstrated that he's one of the best offensive players in baseball, and he's performed at a high level for us, and so that would be a priority for any team. It certainly is for us.
Does that mean, I know.
I know I probably shouldn't buy into at all the whole facial expression and reaction that Stearns is having when he's smiling versus when he's not, but there was something fairly notable, to me at least, about no smirk, no nothing when talking about Alonso being a priority. We, again, would really, really like Alonso back, but the Mets have to make sure that they don't give their cards away at all either in this pursuit of bringing back the polar bear. And I think just like last offseason, the market is not at all in Alonso's favor to the degree that maybe other fans really thought it was going to be the case. I don't really think that is the case right now. I think that Alonso's market doesn't look great. I think that's a key factor as to why he's attending these winter meetings as of tomorrow. And this is regarding more on Alonso, on if the Mets, can re-sign him, if they're going to bring him back. Okay, right as I'm trying to show it, everything goes to kaput here. That's not cool. Not cool at all. I don't appreciate that one bit, as a matter of fact. Very annoying. Wow, okay. Glitched City over here. I'll just go F myself. Cool, great, love that. Fantastic. All right, give me 1 second. Got to go find this clip now. And yes, that we just had that conversation. I love the fact that we just had that conversation. I want Trevor McGill so bad. But I need Trevor McGill and Edwin Diaz. I need to be spoiled here. I can't just have one or the other.
Do you plan to meet with Pete Alonso this week in person?
I did see Pete was coming. I think Pete knows us really well. I think we know Pete really well. I think he'll take the time here to perhaps meet with organizations he doesn't know quite as well, and I'm sure we'll be in touch.
So now all smiley there for Stearns when initially talking about Pete attending the winter meetings, and David is just reiterating what I was saying earlier on the platform. No one should be surprised by this. They know each other very well. The Mets know exactly what they want from Pete, and Pete knows exactly, what he wants from the Mets. So they're both in a very, very good position right now, I would say, to put themselves in the right direction of hopefully, again, amending and reaching a deal similar to as they did a year ago. Okay, guys, there is a new piece here from Jon Heyman. We'll see if any of this is actually new or if it's just more of the same. Let's go ahead and double check this. And I think it's actually a very good transition because it is regarding Pete Alonso. Because, again, we talked about this in our video from earlier today. But as you guys can see, Alonso's traveling to the winter meetings in Orlando to meet with the Red Sox Orioles. Understandably so, to hear from those markets, especially for teams he doesn't have as much of a familiarity with. Not necessarily that he's going to land with either of those clubs. But now if we go from that to now going to Heyman, as you guys can see from this article, and I'm going to read it off to you guys live in real time here. Here it is. Mets check-in with Schwarber adds a bit of intrigue to slugger market, but Schwarber to Philly still makes sense, meaning Mets are best off keeping Pete. I mean, yes, common sense. I think we understood that one. Let's see if there's anything notable in this piece here. Okay, everybody. Let's see. The Mets were checking on Philly's coveted all-star home run hitter Kyle Schwarber. Yet we know this. This has been reported widely across Major League Baseball for the past week and a half, 2 weeks now. These questions now must be asked. Could we see a superstar shakeup? Could the Mets be left without the power hitter they need? Yeah, I mean, there's always possibility that the Mets could end up not landing either Alonso or Schwarber, but I'll have to see it to believe it before we get to that happening. In the meantime, let me just make sure that I do not see anything here that is new news, per se, in this article for each and every one of you. I disagree that he's saying that like guys like Tucker especially isn't a fit for the Mets because they have their best hitter, in Soto and right field. That doesn't make any sense at all. You would literally just shift Soto to left. You'd put Kyle on right, and you call it a day. Not that hard. It's interesting that the Mets are showing interest in Schwarber. Yeah, I mean, the Mets are making sure that they have their options weighed is simply what this is. The Mets are going to make sure whether this is more, like media posturing. Not, I shouldn't even say posturing, but just this is more of a play with the media for the sake of trying to get certain bids to go more, or if this is actually truthful where there's smoke, there's fire. Schwarber's a guy that the Mets love. I've told you guys that it would be hilarious if the Mets didn't heavily pursue Schwarber this offseason. I'm not at all surprised that they're involved in his market right now. I mean, the numbers speak for itself down there. And in a world where Pete Alonso doesn't return, Schwarber is a perfect consolation prize, in my opinion. As good of one as possible. But the same feeling that I have in regards to Schwarber is kind of how I have with Diaz's situation, in the sense that as good as a lot of these other reliever options are in the market, you still want Edwin Diaz back. He's still your guy. If you don't have your guy, you're not loving what you're seeing there. And Alonso's our guy. He's our home run king. So the idea of him not being in this organization, God forbid, especially if the Mets and the Phillies did a swap, like a 1-for-1 slugger swap, where the Mets signed Schwarber, but the Phillies said F it, and they signed Alonso to platoon first base and DH with Harper, which would just be insane. If that happened, then it would be insane, truthfully. But I think as of now that the Mets like Schwarber a lot, but I don't really see a world where they would sign him like before we found out the resolution of Alonso. And that's why it's hard to envision Schwarber being in New York Met. And it's not that Schwarber wouldn't be awesome in a Mets uniform. I think he'd be effing fantastic. And say what you will about the more lefty-heavy lineup. Guys, Schwarber and Soto back-to-back in this lineup would be disgusting. Disgusting. Don't tell me it wouldn't be. It would be so entertaining. It'd be so much fun to watch. We all know it would be. But it's not just that. It's also the fact that the expectation throughout the industry that has been relayed in the media that we're going to talk about again tonight is more on the fact that the New York Mets. So Wardy lied about every BBA. What are you talking about? What are you yapping about? What are we saying? You just getting it all thrown off here. Schwarber is someone who I think makes plenty of sense for this club. But if he is the next domino expected to fall, you can't really make your decision on him without it immediately impacting the decision of Alonso. Because if the Mets said, F it, we're giving Schwarber 4 or 5 years, a bag, high AAV, fat bonus, deferred dollars, and he says, you know what, Philly, we had a good run, but I ain't doing anything else with you. We already peaked together. It's time to break up this core. Wishing you the best. I'm going now to your rival. If that happened, then that would quite literally reach the end of Alonso coming back to the Mets. You would hope that that wouldn't be the case, but unless the Mets show up their outfield and infield defense so greatly that they are okay with Alonso being solely their first baseman moving forward, which feels very is so contradicting to what the industry belief has been, which is that the Mets would like to upgrade more defense and they would like to have Alonso not be solely our first baseman. So that way you can have a defensively minded first base option for the times that he's not there. I'm not entirely sure you go about this because Schwarber's so bad defensively. Like, if you think Pete's bad at first base, just wait till you see someone like Schwarber there. Yes, you love the idea of platooning Schwarber and Alonso at DH, but here's the thing, though. For the times then that Alonso's at DH, Schwarber, where is he going? He's either going to first or he's going to left, and you don't want either of those things to be the case. You simply don't. You don't. I think the issue here is that they're too similar of profiles and what they provide the team. And what is it headlined by? Complete lack of defensive value, something that Kyle Schwarber and Pete Alonso very much so have in common. So for that reason alone, I will be very surprised if the Mets somehow, someway pulled off an offseason where they signed both Alonso and Schwarber. Would I lose my mind? Yes, no doubt about it. But that's what I have to say about that. Also, everybody, just an FYI, 40 minutes from now at 10 p.m. Eastern is when Juan Soto signed with the Mets a year ago. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but all I'm saying is just because nothing's happened at this point in time does not mean that nothing will happen necessarily for the remainder of the night. Now, if you're watching this on replay and you see that no news happened, like a breaking news of signings or trades, then, so be it. It was another calm night in winter meetings, unfortunately. You have to hope that'll pick up more the next day. Let's see. According to Heyman, Schwarber to the Mets is a launch shot. Yeah, I mean, of course it's a launch shot because it's hard for him to fathom leaving Philly to land with the Mets, especially when the Mets are believed to have wanted Alonso more. But if I'm being completely frank with you, everything that I've heard in the industry is that the Mets like Schwarber more than Alonso. They find him more appealing. They find him more of an immediate team fit. And they like the idea of the culture change that would bring to the team if the Mets move past the relationship with Alonso and move forward with someone like Kyle. I'm not saying that that's a guarantee to happen. All I'm just saying is there is absolutely a world that the Mets have envisioned where Alonso does not return and Schwarber is essentially the replacement. It just feels crazy knowing that if you did make something like that happen, that if Pete doesn't go to Boston, you're probably screwed because why wouldn't he go to Philly then? And if you're Alonso, you want to go to a batter's park for half the season if you're leaving Citi Field. You want to go somewhere that's really going to help increase your likelihood to become that 500 home run career hitter the way that you're longing for, that you told David Stearns and Steve Cohen in your team meeting together a year ago before you signed back with the Mets. The Bank is one of the best hitter parks in baseball. That's why Schwarber had 56 home runs in park this past year. Definitely factored in a positive influence for him, as well as Fenway would be fantastic for Alonso. Obviously, he'd hit a lot of what should be home runs technically off the Green Monster, But he would be an extra base hits god. He would be able to go to center and right at a fairly good rate for them. And I think he would dominate. So, like, if Alonso does, in fact, not return the New York Mets, and I really do hope that he does, but if he doesn't, I hope he's a Boston Red Sox. That is the one team I hope he lands if he does not return to Flushing, Queens. Because I don't really have an ill will with Boston. I like how they operate. I like how similarly structured they are to the Mets right now with a lot of great young pitching talent. There's some overlap there for sure. So all the more reason as to why I wouldn't hate it, and he wouldn't be going to like a rival the way that the Phillies most certainly are. That would be the best scenario. If the Mets lose Alonso, but they bring in Schwarber, and Alonso goes elsewhere, and the Phillies can't properly supplement that power that they lost, that would be awesome. But we're just speaking hypotheticals right now. No more, no less. Is in the lab too lefty heavy, though? Depends on what you do for the outfield. If you land Schwarber for DH, you're probably a little less inclined to go after another lefty bat for the outfield the way that maybe you were initially thinking the Mets would go ahead and land Cody Bellinger or, pipe dream Kyle Tucker. I think a loose Robert becomes more likely in that world. I also think that you can balance things if you sign, say, a Kazuma Okamoto to be your first base type. To have Schwarber at DH, Okamoto at first, who's a right-handed bat with a David Wright-esque swing, who can also play third, so you can platoon him a little bit if you want to move him around. And then your outfielder, you get creative. Do you want to add someone who could be your center fielder right away? Is there any way you could pry Byron Buxton away from the Twins? Is that at all potential, or is that ship already sailed because the Twins are so effing stupid? I don't really know. There are routes the Mets can go, though, that they will look like a completely different team next season. Like, completely different. And I never want to give up someone like Alonso. I don't want to see him go anywhere. But like I say anything else, I'm a Mets fan first before I'm a player fan first. So at the end of the day, I'm going to be hoping that whatever the team does is just in the best interest of the organization. And I do believe that they would be inclined to be able to go down a route similar along those lines, as long as they properly allocate both the balance of supplementing the offense and the defense. What is going on? Some of the shit you guys say in the chat just cracks me up. Suggesting Pete is a hack is just stupid. Like, Mets fans are the worst against them own selves. They'll be like, I want to win a championship, but then rag on like the top players for the team consistently. That is a BS take. I agree with that. However, we're just getting some silly stuff in here. He has won, 6 games in his career? No. Do the math on the Fangraphs wins above replacement. Wardy, any updates on Okamoto? No, haven't heard too much on Okamoto right now. A lot of teams like Kazuma Okamoto, but I haven't really heard much beyond that. Skubal news? Yes, we did get Skubal news from yesterday that that he very well could still, in fact, be traded this offseason. That appears to be increasing given the amount of teams that have interest in him and are willing to shell out what will be a big offer in order to land the coveted back-to-back Cy Young Award winner. Yes, that is definitely still a possibility, no doubt. There's plenty more that I would like to get into tonight, everybody, so let's go ahead and do exactly that. I'm going to see if there's certain updates I want to share with you guys, and then let's go on from there. Beyond that, we will then continue on the live show for what's going to be a very extended period of time. Both we will cut things off for replay viewers as well. Let's see. Sorry, everybody. I'm just making sure that I got all my ducks in a row. Give me 1 second. Okay. Let's continue on. We got a lot more to break down this one, like I said. And we're going to talk not just on Mets tonight, but we're also going to continue to talk on Major League Baseball as a whole. And yes, guys, please help us get to our next short-term goal to our 800 plus concurrent viewers, 350 plus in live chat. That'd be greatly appreciated. Our goal is to usually get to 500 plus by the end of each night when we do big live shows like this. Let's see. Hey, Wardy, what's the likelihood that the Mets go ahead and land Kyle Tucker, go after him? I mean, the Mets are definitely in the market for Kyle Tucker, but I think the jury's still out as to how heavy of interest do they have in his market. That I don't know, and I think Bellinger is still far more feasible than Tucker, given his defensive upside and versatility. Are you confident that Pete will resign? I'm confident that Pete will get a contract that would be more of the appetite for the Mets, but I can't say in full confidence that the Mets will re-sign Alonso, because if there's any truth to the Schwarber connection right now, if it's not just smoke, if there is some type of fire, of course, being created that is causing said smoke, then the jury's still out as to if the Mets are actually going to bring back Alonso, or are they going to go down a different route, different direction now to change the look of the organization and really have Juan Soto be that guy with Lindor and so on and so forth. This is what Andy Martino had to say on the front of Framber Valdez.
The interest in Framber Valdez is that, I guess I would call it modest at best. I thought it was really telling. We talked about it at the time a couple weeks ago in Las Vegas. Valdez was there at the GM meetings, meeting with teams personally, and the Mets were not among those teams to meet with him. All the stuff you guys were talking about before you took the question to me here about the Mets' reluctance to go long on pitchers and free agency of a certain age, like that is very real in terms of David Stearns' philosophy. So this would surprise me if Valdez ended up being the guy that the Mets committed to here. But, you know, they're at least minimally engaged in that market.
So there's one very interesting thing that I find regarding the Valdez stuff, because Andy's notorious for throwing cold water on everything. And he has been wrong many times by throwing cold water on things, when in reality, things were very much hot. And I'd imagine that he's throwing this more in speculation from the Mets supposedly not meeting with Valdez at the GM meetings. And what's fascinating about this is the following. I went on a big spiel last night in our first of multi-day live coverage for winter meetings, stating how John Morosi has such little credibility as someone who's only known for the Shohei Ohtani to Toronto take a couple years ago. He's not known for breaking truly any news of significance on the baseball front. And every year that I've been not covering, but at least, you know, watching the Mets and covering them to varying degrees at least, and he has had more credibility between the two. And Morosi had reported and doubled down today on MLB Network that the Orioles, the Mets, and the Giants were among teams that actually met with Valdez at the GM meetings while he was physically in attendance there in Vegas. Andy has reiterated again tonight that that was not true, that the Mets did not meet with Valdez, and that the Mets don't have an appetite for a long-term deal. Now, he's not inaccurate regarding the Mets' lack of appetite for a long-term deal, but who said it's a guarantee that the Mets would sign Valdez on a long-term deal? I think that's a lot more speculation than is reality. I don't believe for a second that Framber Valdez has a market right now that's going to lock him up for 7 years. 6 years, maybe a 6-year option. But Framber Valdez is going to fall in the 4 to 6 year category, everybody. And when he does, do not be surprised when you see the New York Mets still heavily involved there. Whether the Mets land him in the end or whether he goes elsewhere, whether it is the Baltimore Orioles, whether it is the San Francisco Giants. What I'm here to tell you is that the Mets absolutely are still in Valdez's market. And I say that with great confidence. That is not at all to slight Andy, but the fact that literally from the people that I know, they had essentially relayed that, you know, like for as much as we know that Andy is usually on the money with certain things, we respectfully disagree with him on this one. And we have been consistent with our thought process behind this as to what we know versus what he knows. So I don't really know, to answer, if I'm being completely honest with you. And this is more of a waiting game. I just want to find out, A, where's Valdez going and when? And B, where did the Mets land in that? Were they ever heavily involved the way that we believed? Were they just more preliminary, you know, to littler degree, the way that Andy is, you know, suggesting at this point in time? Or is it something even more different than either of us can fathom at the moment? Not entirely sure. But one thing I am sure of is that Framber Valdez, he's entering his age 32 season, and he's the most surefire guaranteed thing to what the Mets could be getting for the rotation right now. And we know that because he has the makeup. He has multiple seasons of pushing north of 200 innings on the gun. He's been unbelievably effective, as we know. And he's someone who could obviously do a fantastic job for the New York Mets without going too long term. Now, you say no way on 4 years. Do you say no way in the sense of not wanting Framber on 4 years, or that he wouldn't sign 4 years? Because I'm telling you, if the Mets throw him the bag of high AV on a 4 or 5 year contract, I definitely think that's more in the realm of possibility than some people are making it out to believe right now. There's nothing wrong with the Marlins dudes, but they got to show willingness to trade in the division the way that they so easily did and dumped away Jesus Luzardo like it was nothing. When Luzardo would have been fantastic in the rotation should he have stayed for the 2025 season in Miami. I would love a Edward Cabrera and to a lesser degree a Sandy Alcantara, but to be determined as to if they're actually going to trade in the division like that. Valdez, though, as I stated, when you look at the free agent class, when you look at him, when you look at Zach Gallen, you look at Michael Cain, you look at Tatsuya Imai, you look at these starters, and no one has a more consistent track record of makeup and dominance the way that Valdez has had. Entered his age 32 season, World Series champion, Cy Young caliber pitcher when he's been as peak at his best, someone who would dominate, could be your opening day starter, and be a starter to begin playoffs for you. Valdez has everything the Mets would want. You just don't want to go long-term with him, and understandably so. And if the Mets can avoid that long-term commitment to Valdez, I think that, again, they're a team that you should be far from writing off on the potential of the Mets actually signing. Or landing, rather. I don't know why I just said with signing. Speaking nonsense here. My apologies, everybody.
Not going to chase. If the market for Bellinger goes at 6-7 years or whatever the Yankees consider unreasonable, they're just not doing bidding wars this year, I don't think. So obviously how that impacts the team whose hot stove show we are having right now is that it seems like Bellinger is more available on the open market to the highest bidder, which may not be the Yankees after all, and obviously is a guy that can prevent a lot of runs in the outfield and at first base. Just such a perfect fit for the Mets.
Yeah, very.
So to expand on that, I agree a lot with Andy there in the sense that Bellinger is a near perfect fit for the Mets. I think he's a perfect fit right now, especially now knowing that you're going to have Alonso's uncertainty. Like if Alonso doesn't return, Bellinger makes a lot of sense. I think Bellinger makes a lot of sense in the world where Alonso, even if he does in fact return, you can still get very creative with him. Let me hear, I just got a text message. Let me make sure it's nothing breaking news. Hold on. We have some Tarik Skubal news. Shout out to my guy, Jordan Simpson. If you guys don't know Jordan, he's the man who made the WardyNYM post-game jingle. We love Jordan on the platform here. But to expand more on Bellinger, we're going to talk a bit on Belly. Then we're going to talk a little bit more on the front of, pardon me, that being in, wow, I just had a massive brain fart. I sincerely apologize. Of literally what I just said on Tarik Skubal, and then we will go on from there. So let me go ahead and just get rid of this for a second, play some Bellinger highlights for you guys, and we can talk more on the Bellinger front. Because Bellinger is someone who, yes, there's concern with his lack of consistent bat over the years. And of course I took care of the hands. Don't you guys worry. And yes, I'm texting Stearns. What else would I be doing, right? Half jokes aside. But this is a player profile that I think is one of the best fit, not only for the team, but for what David Stearns is looking for. You're looking for a guy that can be a plus bat and be an elite defender for you in various positions. He makes the Jeff McNeil trade so much easier, even though it was easy to begin with now because he has such little value for the team, given adding Marcus Semien and what they plan to do for next season. But if you add Bellinger, you can play him in center, you can play him in left, you can play him in right. For the times that you do play him in, say, right or left, you can give an off day, especially if you want to give, say, Soto one day at DH. I know he doesn't want to DH much, but maybe you can get him to do it at least once or twice because you got Belly there to handle right field without a problem. You can go down that route. You can also have Bellinger at first. And for the times you have Bellinger at first, you have Alonso at DH. That's why a Bellinger-Alonso 1-2 punch would be fantastic for this team because you would have had replaced Nimmo with Bellinger, who's 3 years younger, who's night and day difference, a far more elite defender. Literally, Bellinger is one of the most elite defenders in baseball. Yes, people say that, oh, Bellinger is a guy that might just become around a little bit above league average as a hitter for the Mets. And here's the thing. Even though Bellinger didn't look great on the road this past season, he has had success everywhere he's went. From LA to Chicago to now New York. He knows what it takes to win, and he's been a part of these big markets, and he's thrived in these big markets. I would anticipate that to continue, especially if he was in a Mets uniform, say commanding center and or left field for this team and getting some reps at first base. And by adding someone of Bellinger's ilk, you bring in one of the most versatile plus bat options in baseball currently. You pry yet again another trade chip away in a one-and-done year and their pit stop in the Bronx. And the beauty about picking up these guys from the Yankees is not as much of them playing with the Yankees as it is you allow them to get a year to go through the hiccups, the highs, and the lows of adjusting to New York and all that entails. In the case of Devin Williams, a big thing for him was housing and figuring out traveling to work and the comfortability of everything else in between on that front. For Bellinger, he was a smooth transition, but, he's just a dog like that. He's always just chilling. Point stands, though. These are guys that really check off a lot of boxes for the Mets right now. And if you get someone like Bellinger, who, of course, has thrived in a big market like New York this past season, what makes you think that he wouldn't fare well here? I'm not saying that he would be the best thing imaginable, nor am I saying that he would live up to the entire contract. If you sign him on a 5 or 6 year contract of easily over $100 million, obviously, you're not going to love maybe how that grades out a couple years into the deal. But, and this is my biggest counter I say on everything, if you can get out of 5 years of WardyNYM, where the defense has fallen off a cliff the past 2 years, what makes you think you can't get out of Cody Bellinger's deal halfway through? If, say, he's awesome for the first 3 and then not looking great as then he gets into his mid-30s. Then you worry about it then. It's not that hard. Same thing with Marcus Semien. You really think Marcus Semien is going to play every final year left on his deal with the New York Mets? I highly doubt that. I bet Semien provides 1 to 2 seasons with the New York Mets, and then that's it. Then the Mets either eat his contract or they part ways with him and he somehow gets dumped elsewhere. I don't think Bellinger would finish out his contract if he signed with the Mets at 5 or 6 years, but that's not what you're signing him for. Did the Mets sign Juan Soto for the production that's expected of him from age 36 to 40? No, even though he'll probably still be awesome. No. We're investing on the Soto that's a decade younger than that and how much he can immediately provide. So, yes, I understand for Bellinger, you have concerns with his lack of consistency with the bat over the past couple of years. We know he's dealt with a multitude of injuries, which has impacted his swing path and just how he approaches the plate. But what he can rock one, guys, like that was not short porch needed. Okay, that was second decky, no problem. I think he'd be awesome for this Mets team. And I really do believe that he fits the mold of what the Mets are looking for right now. So Mets fans, let me know, everybody. Give me yay or nay if you guys are for or against Cody Bellinger coming to the New York Mets this offseason. Here's President Baseball Ops Scott Harris issued his most forthright comments on the Tarik Skubal situation yet. And let's pull up Skubal's stats so that way you guys can hear them as we relay these quotes together. Harris had this to say in the context of why he'd previously been mum on the decision about whether to trade Skubal in the final year before free agency. And I quote from Scott Harris, the same Scott Harris who said no to the Mets GM job a couple years ago when he tried landing him instead of Billy Epler. I've been pretty clear, and this is when he was with the San Francisco Giants. He left the Giants to join the Tigers to run their ship. I've been pretty clear since I've been here, Harris said. I don't believe in untouchables at any level. So anyone in our organization at any level, it's not a commentary on Tarik specifically, sort of a blanket team building approach. I think I can't do my job without listening. I can't do my job without exploring anything that may or may not have legs. Some are maybe very likely moves. Some are going to be extremely unlikely, but you can't actually fully vet those opportunities unless you're willing to listen. So that's how we're doing it. Woo-hoo-hoo! That's awesome. I love that. You can't catch that 11 out in the cold making such a remark for the effing Minnesota Twins. Him having to use the media to say, oh, we're not going to trade away our Joe Ryans and our Byron Buxtons and our because I'm a dick. Pardon my French. Tarik Skubal needs to be traded. It is in the best interest for the Tigers to listen to these offers and maximize on a blockbuster deal. The New York Mets have all the assets to make a blockbuster deal happen for Tarik Skubal. And these remarks only make this look more likely. The fact that he's not closing the door tells you what you need to know. If they can find a suitor at the price they're looking for, he's gone. I need Tarik Skubal. I need him so bad. I know I'm not the only one that feels that way, but I'm a huge Tarik Skubal fan, in case you guys have not paid attention already. And, you know, there's many reasons as to why I'm a big Skubal fan, everybody, but let me just enlighten you once more in case you guys are a little not too versed on the front of Tarik Skubal. Let's go ahead and let me just remind you just a smidge. These are Freddie Peralta's numbers, as pretty and as nice as they are, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the following and this. Oh, why? You know when you guys speak about something and it makes you do that thing? I just did that. I just typed Peralta's numbers again. I'm a schmuck for that. I'm sorry. My bad. No one's fault on my own. That was funny. Ah. 100th percentile in pitching run value. 98th in fastball run value, 80th in breaking run value, 100th in off-speed run value, 95th in expected ERA, 86th in expected batting average, 91st in fastball velocity, 97th in average exit velocity, 97th in chase percentage, 92nd in whiff percentage, 94th in K percentage, 97th in walk percentage, league average in barrel percentage, 95th in hard hit percentage, 49th in ground ball percentage, 53rd right around league average in extension for his 6'3", 250-pound frame. Change up, he threw 31% of the time this past season. He had 100+ strikeouts on it. All I can do is giggle because it's video game. Like, he's so good. Like, this is Jacob deGrom good. That's how good Skubal is. Four-seam fastball, he threw 29% of the time. 98 is where he sat, touching 100+ on the gun. Sinker, 24% of the time at 97+ on the gun. Slider, 12% of the time, 90+ on the gun. And curveball that he threw just 3% of the time, 81 miles per hour plus on the gun. Tarik Skubal is what turns the rotation from good to great. The Mets land Skubal if they trade for another quality starter like Michael Cain. If you're 1-2-3 next season with Skubal, McClain, and Cain, that's literally one of the best 1-2-3s in baseball. Like, there's no denying that. No denying that at all. We have more news from one Mark Feinsand that we'll get into in a second. But this all goes without saying. Tarik Skubal checks off every single box and then some for this Mets team. You'd be a fool if you think that the Mets wouldn't give up a haul for him just to let him walk a year after landing him. That would not happen, because that's exactly what's about to happen. Let's go ahead and do it, everybody. If you guys don't know what I'm referring to, we were live this time last year for day one of MLB winter meetings. Myself and I had my buddy Draftneck Mark on as a guest, and that's when the news broke from John Heyman, and it was so euphoric. We gotta play the clip. I'm gonna not only play the clip for you guys. Yeah, Phillip Rivers might be coming out of retirement. It hasn't played since 2020. That old man with probably 17 kids, as many kids as he has that number on his jersey. I'm not even exaggerating. It's so many effing kids. But that's not what we're here to talk about. And yes, we're rocking the denim jack. If you guys didn't see, we used to wear this back in the day. But let's go ahead and let's pull up what is so special about the anniversary of today. Let's go ahead. And apologies in advance, kiddos, for the profanity that you're about to hear in this clip. It's an understandable level of profanity when you sign the largest, most historic contract in North American sports history. When I say I am referring to, obviously, the New York Mets. And I will get to the Feinstein article. Don't you worry. We'll talk about it. Here we go, guys. Buckle up. Prepare your eardrums. Holy fuck, John Heyman just broke it. Holy
What?
shit. 765, 15 years. Holy shit.
What?
It happened. It
No.
happened. It happened.
No.
Please be right. Please be right.
No,
Please
no,
be
no,
right.
no, no,
Please
no,
be
no.
right. Please be
No, no,
right.
no.
Please be right. Please be right. Please
Oh
be
my
right.
God. Oh my God.
Mark,
Oh
I'm
my
gonna pass.
God.
Mark, we're
Oh my
gonna
God.
pass out, Mark.
Let's go.
Mark, we're gonna fucking pass out. Oh my God.
Wardy, I'm out.
Holy fuck, Johnny! So that's one thing, to be there live for the immediate reaction, because we were already live for at least an hour or so before that news broke. But this was another, and this was something I'm still very grateful for to this day, and that was to be featured on the New York Mets 2-part exclusive doc regarding the pursuit of Juan Soto.
Thinking about the various teams still involved, he had great organizations pursuing him. He had arguably the best organizations in baseball in some of the best cities in our country pursuing him.
I mean, this is a shotgun marriage, right? I mean, he's under pressure too because he's got to make a decision.
The most anticipated week of the Major League Baseball offseason gets underway on Monday. A ton of anticipation around both Mets and Yankees fans.
I just thought that if he was going to stay in New York, don't know what the other bids were. If he was thinking about going elsewhere, that he would choose the Yankees.
Juan Soto reportedly wants to have a strong relationship from ownership down.
Generally, these meetings have been about ownership.
It starts with Steve Cohen being that X factor, being a more personal owner.
Didn't get any indication that, you know, that we were the preferred spot. The best I could get out of them, I checked the owner's box, you know, whatever that means. And better than nothing, but certainly I felt not enough to make him go cross town.
Go ahead and check it out.
Thinking about the various teams.
Apologies for the audio running there. All right, guys, Mark Feinsand. Here we go. Winter Meetings Insider. A Schwarber deal before meetings end will get market moving in a hurry. Plus, Michael Cain and the Mets and the Nats' popular trade targets. So, again, guys, as we have expected, the Mets are not only involved in the Michael Cain market. However, according to Mark Feinsand, who did report like literally 72 hours ago or so, that the Mets are viewed as one of the most interested teams in Michael Cain and his market this offseason, do appear to be prioritizing now Michael Cain as their top rotation target. So if Michael Cain is their top rotation target, everybody, that looks good. You just got to make sure that you do more than Michael Cain. Because if you add solely Michael Cain, that is not enough this offseason. And that goes without saying. It simply isn't. You have to make sure you add more than Michael Cain. Because Michael Cain doesn't have the track record of innings for you. You need to add certainty. If the Mets know that, I think the Mets would find themselves inclined to do that this offseason. But Michael Cain, as one of the two guys, sign me the hell up. So that's good to hear. That's been reaffirmed. This really isn't that new, I would say, because, again, Feinsand just reported a couple days ago that the Mets were one of the most interested clubs in Michael Cain's market right now. But this just reaffirms exactly that. I do think that Michael Cain is an attractive piece for the New York Mets to find themselves landing. I definitely want to hear again from you guys if you guys think that Michael Cain is the guy for the Mets to get, or if you think the guy for the Mets to get is Michael Cain and another starter, because that's where I fall in the category of, especially as long as you're trading someone like Cody Senga. Now, let me go ahead and break this down for you. Oh, interesting. Kevin Ace of the San Diego Padres is dropping a bomb at the end of a long day at the winter meetings. Whoa, let's check this out, everybody. It's fitting that this is from the Padres, considering the fact that we're talking about a former Padre and Michael Cain. Let's go ahead and check this out. Let's check out this piece, shall we? We'll get this up. Get this down. And again, this is from Kevin Ace, who's one of the main guys on the beat for the San Diego Padres. Two sources familiar with the Padres discussion said Preller is shooting big. One source said the Padres are working multiple fronts that could result in deals that rival the massive trade in which they acquired 4 major leaguers in exchange for Juan, Soto, and Trent Grisham at the winter meetings 2 years ago. Another source said Preller's plans coming to fruition would make the deals he made at the past 2 trade deadlines pale in comparison. For context, he's had guys like Mason Miller, just to name a few, Tanner Scott. The sources, who are not authorized to speak publicly, provided no further detail. And that is the way the winter meetings go. There's often difficulty in discerning speculation from rumors, and either one from a nugget or information with actual traction. What could a move be that the San Diego Padres would do that would find themselves in the same conversation as when they did the blockbuster with Juan Soto, or when they traded Juan Soto away? Well, you know, there is one guy in particular that comes to mind right away when you think of a blockbuster San Diego Padres move that could happen. And that blockbuster would be headlined by none other than one Fernando Tatis Jr. Now, I know, I'm not getting my hopes up either. However, if you're telling me there's a chance, that Fernando Tatis Jr. can be traded, this man is exactly what the New York Mets need. An elite defender, the best right fielder in baseball defensively, would shift Soto to left. Oh my God. Or you can even have Nando in center because he's so good. I have the graphic ready already. For those that don't know, I have a Tatis traded to Mets graphic that I made a month ago, just out of like shits and giggles, because I'm like, who knows? Maybe if I set it up, it'll happen. We're ready. We're ready in case that happens. Oh my God. Could you imagine a Mets outfield of Tatis, of Soto again together, this time as a New York Met? And then you got Carson Bench. I mean, actually, what do you have, Carson Bench? If I'm the Padres, I'm demanding Carson Bench in a trade for Fernando Tatis Jr. If you're the Mets, you love Carson Bench, but you probably don't lose sleep on shipping him off in that scenario. Trade for Luis Robert, trade for Nando, bam.